and welcome to Media Musings. Particular hello to Kitty the Atheist, and of course anyone lurking in the chat and or watching in the future. Apologies for the delay, but Google decided to be a dick to me.
For once, the technical difficulties were not my fault, folks.
Yeah.
Cool. So, hey up.
Yep.
We are doing Logan Lucky this week.
Yep.
A nice palate cleanser after the month of in-depth analysis of deeply, deeply troubling and emotionally difficult topics.
Yeah.
When they said it was the hillbilly Ocean's 11, they weren't joking.
Yeah.
Obviously, looking at this from an outside point of view, I'm British, raised British. Closest I've ever got to a hillbilly is like that. Maybe I walked past someone when we were in Tennessee that one time.
Yeah.
But I grew up on country music, so the soundtrack of this movie, it's okay with me.
Yeah.
Don't expect a lot of analysis. This is a comedy movie. It's a popcorn movie. Speaking of popcorn, but there is some interesting stuff to dig into that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And it should be fun. Obviously, as always, we keep an eye on the chat. Any comments, anything you've got to say, any questions you've got, fire away. I think that's a reasonable introduction. So let's kick off.
And describing it as like rednecks, redneck or hillbilly Ocean's 11 is pretty much the perfect way to let people who haven't seen the movie know what they're getting into.
Yeah. It's very... There's a lot of tropes it uses in this. It's very much of its genre.
Yeah,
this is a movie about hillbillies for hillbillies.
And it is also very much a heist movie.
Yeah, it's very working class. It's very, like, it speaks to the working class in me, and I'm British. There's certain things that sort of transcend nationality when you're of a certain class and you've been raised a certain way. Yeah, it's really interesting from a class point of view. My reading of this movie, if I have to analyze it, which apparently I do, rather than just sitting back and enjoying it and laughing at the visual gags, is a very Marxist reading. This movie is a great commentary on class. It's a great commentary on class in the American South.
Yeah.
Nearly every character in this is white, so there's not much by way of race politics going on. There's one bit with race politics, but it's done deliberately and it's obviously pre-planned. And like there's little to no racism in this movie, and the only time racism is really brought up, it's leaning into the stereotype in order to take the piss out of it.
Yeah.
So it's a very happy movie. It's a very good, feel-good movie. It's a sausage fest because what heist movies aren't.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun. Like I say this is a movie for hillbillies and rednecks, but there are a lot of things said in this movie that Ring will tell you I said 3 seconds before the character said it.
Yeah.
Because I am a northern working class person from Yorkshire. And I grew up watching way too much Top Gear. So I also understand that mentality a little bit. I'm not saying I understand the American South because I fucking don't. It's a fucking weird ass place. But there is... This movie, I think, for me... Like, we watch a lot of stuff on this channel about the American South, racism in the American South, American politics.
Yeah.
And it does create this psychological barrier with me. I don't know about with you, Rin, but with me, I have this psychological barrier of there's a certain type of person who comes from the South that I cannot necessarily see myself sitting down and having a beer with.
Yeah.
And then movies like this come along and they sort of remind you that there's good people everywhere.
Yeah.
Because we do like to, we sort of like to go, okay, yes, those people bad, those people good, and world of many hats, everyone's the same with a different nose or whatever.
Yeah.
It's we create stereotypes. You'll hear the name of a place on the news, and if you hear it often enough, you'll associate it with that kind of news story. Basic psychological phenomena. You hear Texas often enough. The only thing I know about Texas from the outside is like big trucks, too many flags, too many guns, and too many calories.
Also, I didn't hear the news until recently, but a quick moment of silence for the people of Allen, Texas. There was shooting at a mall there.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's what my confused face was. I didn't have that news, folks. Yeah, no one deserves that. I don't care who you are away from. No one deserves that.
And
hope everyone's okay. As many people as can be are okay.
But given how often shootings happen in the U.S., part of the only reason I did the moment of silence, like I said, I only just learned about it from seeing tweets about it, and it's like you mentioned Texas, so I figured we might as well have a brief moment of silence.
But look, this is the thing, right? When you're in a quick imagine if you had a moment of silence for every shooting or illegal killing or horrific thing that happened in America. People would never speak again. I understand that the urge to do it, and absolutely all the best to everyone there. I hope everyone's going to be as okay as they can be, and condolences to the families, because the families are going to need condolences. This movie's based in Charlotte. Again,
it's part of it is, but everybody lives in West Virginia.
Yeah. Right.
The target is in Charlotte because it's the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And everybody's in Boone County, West Virginia.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so right, okay. West Virginia's actually.
Yeah, remember the eastern side of the US kind of works on Europe rules when it comes to distances.
Yeah. Fair cop. If they're in West Virginia, so their nearest big town's going to be maybe Lexington.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm just literally looking at a map because for some reason my brain forgot to compute that there is a Virginia and a West Virginia.
Yeah. You know why there is a West Virginia? Or do you know why there is a West Virginia?
I have a degree in American Studies. You think I don't know the answer to that?
Yeah. So do you want to explain it, or do you want me to?
You explain it.
So, when a little, not controversial at all, when a little election happened in 1864 and a guy named Abraham Lincoln was elected president, a big chunk of the U.S. decided to say, go fuck yourself. We're going to make our own country with blackjack and hookers. Well, when Virginia seceded, West Virginia said, go fuck yourself. We're going to make our own state with blackjack and hookers. And they stayed in the Union.
So yeah, they liked the new guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, and also
But
there were like local political stuff that they didn't really feel like part of the state anyways.
I mean, Virginia is
Yeah.
Virginia as a whole, as it was. Like, one part is very urbanized, one part is very ruralized. A
Yeah.
lot of southern states had that problem
Yeah.
because, you know, when you've got more in common with the guy across the battlefield than the guy on your right hand side, because you're both rural farmers and this guy's a city slicker,
Yeah.
that causes a problem. And that's, you know, a lot of the reasons a lot of the Civil War stuff was very couched in Jeffersonian ideals of rural life and everything else during and after, but more so after. But that was a problem. Like that was a genuine problem that, you know, rural people didn't trust city people didn't trust rural people.
Yeah.
It was always going to be that divide, and that almost transcended the broader issues that were going on at the time.
And
It
it's
also, like, because of the way the institution worked, your opinion on slavery could very well be, like, there was a correlation. And I will say correlation because there was not necessarily, like, there was a correlation between how urban you were and how willing you were to support slavery. That's not to say that city people weren't racist shit stains who absolutely wanted to keep black people in chains, because some of them were, but
just like how
there was a correlation there.
And because history likes to rhyme a lot, there is a correlation between how urban you are and how likely you are to accept the fact that LGBT people exist.
Yeah, like, traditionally the Democrats hold all the urban centers in the US. Like, even in the red heart of Texas, you still got blue cities because they are like that's correlation. I don't want to call it causation because that's a kind of worms I don't want to, like, have to put my hands in, but there's so much correlation at this point. If you called it causation, I wouldn't necessarily argue with you.
I think the explanation for how it's causation is that in a more tightly packed urban environment, you're more exposed to different kinds of people, and thus you tend to be more accepting.
Absolutely, because this is what happens, right? Throughout history, if you, one hypothetical family, they start out as rural farmers and they're very old school Republican. They then, one of the sons eventually moves to the big city, has a family, makes his money good. He's a Democrat because his best mate's gay and his other best mate's black, and, you know, he goes to the Mexican restaurant on a Friday night and, you know, his bartender's Spanish or whatever, and he's used to that, and that's his environment, so he votes for where his ideals are. He then makes his money, moves out to the suburbs where all the white people are, and he goes back Republican again because he's no longer in that environment of, you know, that mixed multicultural environment, and he raises his children in that environment, who then grow up Republican, but thinking they're above others because they grew up in a rich family, and they either run for president or move back to the sticks.
Yeah, or
that's basically the history of about 4 different families in the US.
Yeah,
notably, but just be careful about the kids who run for president because sometimes they get shot.
Yeah, or in other, or also there is the, you know, when you get an area that has a reputation for being highly urbanized and highly, you know, left leaning, and you have more affluent people from that area moving out to more rural areas and driving up the housing costs in areas that are struggling financially, you will
You get gentrification. Yeah.
you will get a resentment that does tend to make people swing more towards the opposite, because fuck those, Californians who are,
Yeah.
making it so I can't even, afford to live in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is this thing of demographics and the movement of people very much play into politics. There's a reason gerrymandering's a thing that exists. There's a reason there's some really fucking wacky shaped voting areas in the US. Some of it's gerrymandering, some of it's reasonable.
I was gonna say that's called gerrymandering.
Yes, I literally, yeah. So some of it's because of gerrymandering, some of it's actually reasonable. Like there's, I saw it on an old episode of John Oliver. You can go find it. Where the voting area looks like a pair of like old school headphones.
Yeah.
And it's because there's two black communities linked by one road. That makes sense as a voting block. That's not gerrymander. But then there's other ones where it's like literally, the road is cut in half and shit, and it's like, yeah. So but the thing is, right? Not unfortunately, because I actually like to think it's a good thing. The truth has a liberal bias.
Yeah.
Or liberals are more inclined, and I say liberals in the American term, not in the sort of weird European term that we have, but liberals in the American terminology tend to follow the truth. The truth doesn't have a liberal bias. Liberals have a truth bias.
Yeah.
And you will see that comment thrown around a lot on right-wing media, this liberal bias, this, that, and the other. No, it's truth, but liberals are open-minded enough to actually pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, the difference between fact and truth. Facts have a liberal bias. Truth is just whatever the fuck you want it to be, because your truth is your truth and no one can argue that. No one can tell you what your experience is. But truth is a broad concept of a fact is a fact is a fact. Yeah, it has a liberal bias. And that's how that goes.
So the reason why Logan Lucky is so different from other movies portraying the South, and in fact feels like a natural it feels like a natural transition, and maybe even a counterpoint to everything we had been discussing seeing before, is because it focuses less on the racial and religious politics of the South and more on the socioeconomic condition of the South.
I'll go with you there. I will say a lot of Logan Lucky, to me, right, it's one of those movies, as with most heist movies.
Yeah.
You can put a heist movie anywhere, and it's the set dressing that makes it different to the next one. You can hold a heist movie in Rome, in Paris, in London, in Vegas, at the Charlotte Raceway.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily matter where you hold it, because the plot's always going to be the same. The heist is always going to be the same.
Yeah.
But where you hold it is what makes the movie different to every other movie. And in that way, heist movies are very character driven. Like, you put characters in a situation and you see what happens.
Like,
and
I mean,
the set dressing of who the characters are is what makes a movie memorable.
Like, you could probably do a British remake of Logan Lucky and have it, up in a mining town in Yorkshire or Wales or something.
Well, this is what I mean when I say not a remake of Logan Lucky, because it's very American, is Logan Lucky.
Yeah.
But a heist movie, you absolutely could have 4 Yorkshiremen going down to London for a weekend and breaking into that, the British Museum or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that is, yeah. Or going over to Liverpool or somewhere and robbing something expensive.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really anything north of Watford Gap that I would think is worth, like, yeah. I'm trying to think of something you would target in a heist movie that's kept outside of the London Ring Road. Like, maybe if you tried to steal the money from the takings of a Liverpool football match.
Yeah.
Or a Manchester United maybe the Manchester United, but then what are you going to get? Like a bunch of tin trophies and a few old shirts? Like, yeah. Can you tell I don't have the mind of a thief, folks? But yeah, so this is very American, but this has got the set. What I like about this movie is it's having a conversation about class with the set dressing of the South.
Yeah.
Rather than having a conversation about class in the South.
Yeah.
Which is a completely different conversation. Because if you're having a conversation about class within the South, you cannot do that without a racial element. If you're having a broader conversation about class and money and socioeconomic status, it doesn't really matter what colour your characters are.
Yeah.
Because it will go ahead. Now, this movie is very much of its time. Did this come out like 2013?
2017.
2017, yeah. So this movie is very much of its time. It's got like Fast and Furious jokes, and one of the characters is an Iraq War veteran.
Yeah.
Like, it's of its time. Like, this is not a movie that's made for... Like, this is not going to be one of those movies that's remembered in 100 years as a classic. Like, this is not going to be a cult classic. This is not the next Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not... It doesn't have that timeless element of... You know, the Blues Brothers, yes, talked about Chicago and all these other things, but was saying something broader. Whereas this, there's certain elements to it that immediately date it. And, you know, it does that. But yeah, and one of the first things, because what I'm building up to with all this discussion about class and everything else is the opening scene here. We've got father working on the truck, daughter sat on the bench handing him tools. And it's very obvious, like the daughter, he'll ask for a tool and the daughter will fire back at him with, you know, pass me a screwdriver, flathead or Phillips, pass me a spanner, 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch.
You know,
this back and
pass
forth
me the
between,
pliers, you know, regular or needle nose.
Yeah, regular or needle nose. And this is immediately sets him up as the good father, the good guy. Because, you know, if you want to make a character a good person, you either have them adopt a dog or be good to a child. It's just movie shorthand. Like, no one killed any puppies in this movie. So, and you see that father-daughter, and he takes pictures of her, and he, you know, they've clearly got this thing going of, you know, show me the muscles and all this.
Yeah. Take me to the gun show.
Take me to the gun show.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, there's a father-daughter relationship there. Now, as someone who was also spent many an afternoon watching my father work on the car while handing him tools, my experience looked shit all like that because my father was just not that way out. But it triggered enough memories because there's this mentality, and I don't know if anyone else has had it, when you're AFAB and you're raised in this working class environment, your parents have certain ideas for you. And he's very much leaning into those working class ideas. Like my parents, from a young age, you will learn how to fix a car. You will learn how to change a car tire. You will learn how to change a light bulb and wire a fuse and change a socket and do these things because you will never have to rely on any man to do it. I will not have that. And that's a very working class idea.
Yeah.
This idea that you shouldn't be paying someone to do a job you're perfectly capable of doing yourself. And what that instilled in me, and Ring will, I'm sure, back me up on this, shit goes wrong in my flat. I don't call anyone. I go on YouTube. I Google what's wrong with it and how to fix it. Like, you know, I just do that shit. And that's what he's raising his daughter to do. And that's a very working class thing. Like, and it does contrast with the mother, which we will get to. But you get this conversation they're having as well, which again creates the atmosphere of he's willing to be vulnerable with his daughter. He's willing to tell her the story of the music. He's willing to share something he loves with her. And especially in the broader background of this, where there's a lot of toxic masculinity here, that willingness to be a good father and to be vulnerable for his daughter really makes him stand out from the crowd. Like his brother's got the vulnerability of a missing hand, like, and the other guy's got the vulnerability of making himself sick. Like all of the others have to sort of have something that triggers a moment of vulnerability for you to connect with them as a character. Whereas him, you connect with him because of his relationship with his daughter. That's a deliberate trope. That's a deliberate thing. Like that's why, like characters, like that's why Wolverine picked up what's her name at the side of the road. You know, that's why Deadpool is kind to children, even if it is he's quipping and having a go at them. That's why, you know, there's, you know, Iron Man becomes mentor to Peter Parker. It creates that vulnerability. And in that vulnerability, the audience has a way in.
Yeah.
You have a way in. You look at this man and you say, that's a good man. No matter what else is going on in his life, that's a good man. Yeah. That's a man who loves his daughter and he's doing his best.
Yeah.
And he involves his daughter in his life and in his vulnerability. You know, that's not a girl who's going to grow up with daddy issues because daddy didn't love me, is what's going on here.
Yeah.
That's a girl who's going to grow up beautiful and skilled. And she ain't going to be waiting by the side of the road in a miniskirt waiting for someone to come change a car tire for her. She'll do it her damn self because daddy taught her.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that's tapping into, and that's a very working class thing.
She might have some hang-ups from her mom.
Oh God, don't get me started. Like, I'll get there on the mother, but from her father's point of view. And again, this is the thing, what the movie sets up very clearly is the mother-father dichotomy. It's obviously a broken family. It's obviously a divorce. Mother's clearly remarried and married up. And that socioeconomic commentary does come through in the way that relationship is presented.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk, before we get to there, I want to talk about the power of music.
Okay.
Because that's what he does. That's how this movie opens. He opens this movie by telling his daughter the story of Country Roads. Now, I don't care who you are, okay? I genuinely do not care who you are. But when that track starts playing, okay, you are... Do you know what it is? I tell this story about religious songs, right? Like when you're at a funeral and the aunties start singing how great thou art at a funeral. Don't care what atheist, polytheist, non-religious person you are, you cherish that old wooden cross.
Yeah.
You just do. That's how that works. And that's fine because it's a funeral, emotions are high, whatever. You know, 3 o'clock in the morning when they start playing the same song, you cherish it because you're half pissed in a nightclub. And that's the 5 to 3 song in the black pubs in where I live. Because you spent all night sinning, now you've got to pay your penance. Who knows? But that's the thing with Country Roads. Like, you hear Country Roads, I don't care who you are. Like, the radio does remind you of your home far away when that song plays. I don't care who you are or where you're from. Like, I was humming along to that song. Not American. You all know what I think about. Like, I have memories of singing that song at 2 or 3 years old. There's some of my earliest memories of singing that song at family parties with my mum and my dad. Like, and everyone, like, imagine a bunch of Yorkshire folk, proper Yorkshire folk, right? Singing Country Roads at 2:30 in the morning. Yeah. In someone's living room. And it's so loud, like the police get called and the police come and join in. Like, it's one of those songs, it really is. It's unifying, and it's lovely that this movie opens with it, because it again, it's another one of those things that draws you into the movie. Like, the aesthetic of this movie will put a lot of people off very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, it's NASCAR, it's white people, it's the South, it's that fucking accent, it's trucks, and it's Mustangs, and it's dust, and it's wooden houses, and it's all of that, and it's Fox News, and it's just all of that. And, it's military dependers, and just all of it. And that's a very high barrier to clear for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, there are multiple points in this movie where maybe as a black person, or maybe as a non-white person, or maybe as someone who understands the politics of military families, having been with you when you were in active service, where that I sort of look at and go, ugh, like, I don't necessarily want to carry on with this.
Yeah.
So this movie has to very quickly, it has to hook you, so those things don't put you off.
Yeah.
It has to make you care about this character very quickly.
And then care about why he needs to do the heist.
Yeah.
Which we scene transition. And, well, the thing is, during the opening, it's a different John Denver song playing. It's not actually.
Yeah, no, it is a different John Denver song playing, but he's talking to her about country roads.
Yeah, but he's talking to her about country roads. And before the song ends, it transitions to him working down under the speedway, because apparently there are a bunch of sinkholes opening up in the in the Charlotte Speedway, and they needed miners to go in and patch up the sinkholes.
And again, this is a very common thing. Being a miner is very traditionally a working class job. You are a staunch, proudly a miner. There's even a line in this movie about the union.
Yeah.
Which, coming out of America, I was just like, where's this movie based again?
And the thing is, mining, especially in West Virginia, has a strong history with the union movement in America.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why union movements in the UK as well basically are the history of miners. Like, miners and mill workers were our union people. And
for a good touch point on the history, extra credits has either a video or a series on the Battle of Black Mountain.
Yeah. And here in the UK, to give you an idea of how deeply that relationship between miners and union people goes, that big miners' strike that you hear about from the 80s in the UK with Maggie Thatcher and Scargill, that was the miners' strike. That was literally we still call that the miners' strike. The whole country came out for them, but it was the miners' strike. And that was why the lights had to keep going off, but they kept the country on side for so long. And it took a long time for Maggie to break that strike. So yeah, the history of miners and unions goes way back. And that's why this, again, he's already dirt poor and he's just lost his job. He's a miner. There's this reference to an injury, which anyone who knows anything about being a miner, the minute you've got an injury, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the injury is, you are fucked, because you have to be fit. Like, miners, fucking hands like navvies. Just
the people.
It's a very manly profession.
The people from HR saw you walking with a limp and they're calling it a pre-existing condition and say it's an insurance liability.
Yeah. Which for a minor, think about it, it is, because if something
Yeah.
goes wrong down in that mine and you can't run, you're a dead man. But again, this also is pitched as a workers versus corporate thing of the workers on the ground know he's capable, he's competent, he's a good worker, but they can't go up against the powers that be, the great corporate entity who's probably never touched a mine in its life, never mind actually knows the job.
Yep.
You know, the suits.
Yeah.
And again, it's this class warfare going on of they care about the insurance. The people at the bottom care about the man.
Yeah.
And it's that, and that's why this film is more welcoming to those who aren't necessarily comfortable with the aesthetic of the American South and NASCAR. Yeah. Although the way it does NASCAR is really fucking interesting.
Yeah.
We'll get there, but I do have an observation about the way the NASCAR and stuff was filmed in this movie and about the so obvious absence of something very specific in this movie that should have been there if it was a NASCAR that wasn't. And that's what I'm going to say for there, and then I'm going to leave it.
Well, hold on.
Until I put that pin back in.
Okay.
Because whatever you're thinking, it's not what you're thinking. It's a visual thing. But yeah. So Dirt Paul.
Oh no, it is, and actually, and it would have been jarring for the time. I just did a quick fact check.
What makes you think you know what I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about the lack of certain piece of cloth.
Yeah. I know that. Yeah. I'm talking about, we'll say it now, seeing as you've pulled the pin out. I'm talking about the lack of Confederate flags in the audience.
Yeah.
On the cars, on the uniforms, anywhere in this movie.
Yeah.
And that's deliberate. Because
yeah,
I've seen NASCAR like on the news and shit.
Well,
until very, very recently. That shit was everywhere. At NASCAR.
I had to check, and so whether or not it was before or after the movie came out. That's why that's what I was doing the quick fact check for, and it was 2020 that NASCAR banned the Confederate flag from its tracks.
Yeah. So this movie well predates that.
Yeah.
And that is weird. Like that's just very weird. But again, that feeds into this thing of they're trying to give this the aesthetic of the South without getting all caught up in that icky racial politics. Yeah. It's and again, when I talk about the aesthetic, like I passed the comment, we saw this guy's truck. And I passed the comment to Ring, and I'm going to pass it again because I feel like that was a useful observation on how America looks to outsiders. One day, in about 100,000 years, some archaeologist is going to be digging where America used to be, and they're going to find a Ford F-150, busted up Ford F-150 with half a tank of gas that still fucking runs. Like, that thing is the Nokia of America. Like, Ford, like, those trucks are just ubiquitous in this movie, and rightly so. America looks really, really strange to outsiders, and I will go into that later on. Nerdy, right there with me. Because I have an anecdote to share that's kind of relevant to all of this.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get what they do is they're really clever. They take all the aesthetics of the South, but the ones that are done that are a bit skeevy, like that are a bit you wouldn't admit, like the kind of thing your racist uncle says at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like they're put in the mouths of characters who are supposed to either be comic relief or are not relevant to the plot.
Yeah, and like even having, you know, all of the protagonists being from West Virginia
Yeah.
plays into that, because West Virginia is, you know, like the bit of the, like I said, it's the bit of the South that didn't secede.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, even he walks into the hairdressers and the woman's talking about my husband, the major.
Yeah.
I'm going to shut up now and let Ring talk about Dependers. And then he's going to come back to me and I'm going to talk about the way military wives behave, because it's, yeah, I have opinions.
I'm just going to say it's a thing. Enough said.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know, Ring is a veteran, and I was with Ring when they were in active service, but we weren't married. We were still long distance, which we are still, because
red tape,
logistics. But Dependers are a very specific breed of military wife and or girlfriend.
Yeah.
Depender is not a word you use to someone who you respect. It's short for dependopotamus.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
With all that mental image that just popped into your head implies.
Basically,
she married him for his VA benefits, and she pumped out 3.5 kids, and she thinks she gets to wear his rank. Like she's that.
Yeah, like to be. So the stereotype of the Dependa is basically think a Karen who is throwing their significant other's rank around while also screwing a civilian on the side when he's deployed.
What was the name for that? Jody?
Jody.
Yes. Like, it's a stereotype for a reason. It doesn't exist out of nowhere. Like, it happens. And not quite sure about sleeping with a civilian on the side, but definitely I've known my fair share of these military wives who will look at you if you're not married to your partner and be like, you're not one of the clique. Like, it's very sort of, you know, on Mondays they wear pink.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going on there. I had very little involvement in it. I made a couple of friends online, but I stayed out of it because I can't do with that shit. Like, I don't care what rank your husband is. You're not the one who went through basic training, sweetheart. Sit down and shut the fuck up. I have had my fair share of arguments with military wives who think that I have to call them ma'am because their husband is a fucking officer or an NCO. Just like, bitch, sit down. Sit down. You're not the one sat in a war zone trying to Skype home right now. Sit the fuck down. Yeah, I have opinions on those kind of people, and believe me, they are aware of them.
Yeah.
So we have all of that, and so far, this is all like so far so stereotypical, right? So American. This from as an outsider.
And we have, we also have this great introducing monologue from Melly.
Yeah.
About, you know, all the route shenanigans she had to go through to, you know, drive his daughter to like the rehearsal because he misplaced the date.
Yeah. And like you can clearly see the guy's trying. You know he's just lost his job, so you're primed to have sympathy for him. But generally, you get the idea that he's a fairly stereotypical, not quite deadbeat dad, but guy doing his best when the world's against him.
Yeah.
Like even his own family don't have a lot of time for him. Like you can clearly see that he's fucked up at some point. Like he's a disappointment to everyone around him, and obviously that comes out more and more throughout the movie when you realize he was homecoming king, he was a quarterback, he was going to play for the NFL. What the fuck's he doing down the mines? Like, and then you realize the knee injury.
Yeah.
That's what took him out of the game. It's got to be the knee injury.
Yeah.
And that totally altered the path of his life. You know, he's one of those very stereotypical Bruce Springsteen glory days peaked in high school guys.
Yeah.
And again, that very much feeds into the stereotype of America and working class America. Like every working class guy in America's got a story about how he nearly played for the NFL, or how he was nearly a great basketball player, or how he nearly did this or nearly did that. Like every American's a temporarily embarrassed millionaire.
Yeah.
And that again, it feeds into that stereotype that we see from the outside. You know, everyone would nearly made it.
Yeah.
Because this is the secret of the American dream, folks. It's been sold to you. Like everyone's got that nearly story, and everyone is allowed to get nearly there but never make it. Because while you think you have hope, you'll keep playing.
Yeah.
That's why when you play the lotto, you get 2 or 3 numbers, or you get 2 numbers, and every so often you get a small win, because it keeps you playing.
Yeah.
As with anything, same with you walk into a casino, sit down at a blackjack table. That's what happens. That's how the odds are set up. It's set up so you will win just often enough to keep you at the table, not so often that you're going to take the house for everything it's got. It's called the house edge. Look it up. And that's with all betting, all, you know, that's just the way things go. And that again is very American thing. Like I'm not saying gambling's an American thing, but that mentality of I just won more. Just if one thing had have gone different for me.
Yeah.
And there's a comment Nerdy's put in the chat. No, you don't, Nerdy, but yeah, it's the same mentality. Like I know people who are married to PhDs and stuff who try and claim they're clever and shit, and it's just like, no, sit down. You didn't do the Viva, sit down.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere. People try and bask in their partner's achievements or whatever. Like Ring can use their old ID card or whatever the fuck to go get their military discounts wherever they want to use them. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like that's. I very rarely even tell people in the UK that Ring is a veteran, because then I have to explain that Ring is an American veteran.
Yeah.
And this is England. And this is the North, where within 5 minutes walking distance of my flat, I know 3 families who lost sons in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that shit. And we understand the losses. And we understand that it's not something that you pretend that you use to bolster your own self-image.
And I only, and anyone who's watched my channel for any amount of time, I only bring it up if it's relevant.
Yeah. But then you've got, so we have this established very working class Americana, living the drudgery, missed out on the American dream, had his shot, glory days, all that. And then we're introduced to the mother, who we're told lots of things very quickly about the mother in a very, very cleverly done movie visual language.
Yeah.
We immediately know she's rich. The house is white. It's white, it's big, it's got multiple cars. It's got like a Ferrari, a Lambo, and a frigging Bentley in the driveway.
Yeah, Jimmy Logan is driving a beat-up pickup truck and living out of a trailer, and she's living in like
she's living in a house that the White House looks at for like interior design tips. She's he wants to take his daughter for ice cream, and she's telling her daughter, you have to watch your calories. Her daughter's about 8 years old.
Yeah.
And then you've realised you've got this kid who's stuck between poverty but good dad and rich but bad mother. And I do say bad mother because the way the mother treats her is very controlling. It's very much about image above all else.
Like you very much get the sense that it was her mother that is kind of pushing her to be in the pageant.
Yeah, mother's pushing her to be in the pageant. Like, they're clearly divorced and the mother's married up. Like, either she was slumming it with him or she's married up after him.
Yeah.
One or the other.
And I think she married up because he owns a car dealership that is expanding across state lines.
Yeah, but then even the idea of a car salesman, that comes with a level of skeeviness.
Yeah.
And a level of, you don't necessarily trust car salesmen. They're salesmen, they're slick, there's too much pomade in their hair and their suits are cheap, and like,
also he's a car salesman that doesn't know about cars.
Yeah, we will get to that. We will get there. Because I have opinions. Because he does know about cars. But he thinks she doesn't because he's a sexist pig. But yeah, telling a preteen that they can't have ice cream because they're watching their calories. If you're doing that to your child, stop it. Fucking stop it. No. Stop teaching your children to have an unhealthy relationship with food. Tell them to eat what they like, when they like, in moderation, and to listen to their body and understand what their body wants and needs at any given point, and to be healthy. Like, that poor child, like, obviously that I don't want to insult the actress because obviously it was a child, but she looks skinny as fuck in this movie. Like, a white girl's naturally that skinny. Because I was never naturally that skinny. I've always been big. Like, my mother was feeding me rice from 9 days old. Like, I've always been big. It's, and Jamaican culture, Indian culture prefers bigger women, or at least the Jamaican side of the culture does. So I never really got that. But
I'm going to mention this now because it's, even though it takes place later in the movie, it is something that's more pertinent to this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
When they're at the fair, and she's in the tractor race.
Yeah.
And she gets second place, which is, pretty good. And, she's all depressed, and, Jimmy asks, her father asks her, why are you sad? You got a ribbon. And she said, it only matters if I win.
Yeah. And that's clearly something she's picked up from the mother, from the stepfather, because clearly Jimmy's not taught that because he's asking why she's not happy. And what we are very much encouraged as the audience to do is to draw this dichotomy. Poor man is good man, is kind man, is good father. Rich man is bad, is snide, is ostentatious, is cruel to child, doesn't care about children, wants to take them to a movie that's inappropriate just because it keeps them quiet, has a trophy wife. There's no real emotional connection.
Or also, instead of, choosing a song that she has a connection to for her talent,
she chooses Rihanna Umbrella.
Yeah.
Because that's what Mummy picked.
And her, and her stepbrothers know that the umbrella is not an umbrella.
Yeah, exactly. It's a code, which again speaks to that discussion we've already had about the power of music and the vulnerability music gives country music especially. Like if you listen to country music and you don't cry, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like they just is. I take no further comments on that statement.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had, and what this does in the mind of the audience, it says, okay, rich is bad, poor is good, dad is good, mum is bad. Dad talks like a hick and has hick friends, hicks are good. Mum talks in an upper class accent and pronounces her letters and expects her daughter to go to beauty pageants and do upper class shit. Upper class and elitism and intellectualism is bad. That's what
Well,
this movie
also there is this did also come. If I remember right, this did also come out while there was the conversation about how skeevy child beauty pageants are
Yeah,
was more in the forefront of the cultural zeitgeist.
yeah. But also, you've got dad doesn't keep a cell phone because he doesn't like technology and his truck doesn't even have GPS. Mummy has the latest tech and the latest this and the latest that.
Yeah.
Again, it's creating that dichotomy of anti tech, anti intellectualism. That is a very working class thing. It's a very American Southern thing. You know, why do you think Fox News gets done so well down there? It's not that just because people agree with the politics, it's because that mentality of, you know, those professors in their ivory towers, what do they know about ploughing a field?
Yeah.
And it's that
Well, and
common sense versus
also,
academics and all of that mixed in. And this movie is leaning into that to deliberately pitch you as dad has to do better for daughter because otherwise daughter is going to be trapped with that for a family.
yeah, and also that plays into the whole socioeconomic discussion of the film, because a lot of the rural and the rural less academic urban academic divide is socioeconomic because of how the American education system is run. You can't get past a certain point unless you have a lot of money to shell out or are willing to sell your entire life away in debt peonage.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, like, and you see it as well when he goes to the bar, he talks to his brother. His brother's very superstitious.
Yeah.
Like, you've given it a mouth. He talks about the Logan family curse. And that's exposition for the audience to create a bit of, false jeopardy. But it is also it's indicative again of that difference. Like superstition and like the religion's not specifically mentioned, although one of them
Yeah.
has a tattoo of a cross on his chest. But that idea of superstition comes with poverty and comes with a lack of education, comes with that rural lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily an incorrect statement, but this movie is using that fact to create and again, even the idea of young lad who went into the army, because what were his other options when his
Yeah.
brother was going to go be a big NFL player? Like, what
Yeah.
were his options? Like, young lads going into the army because they can't afford to go to college or they can't afford this, they can't afford that. Happens all the time in America.
Yeah.
Happens all the
And
time in the UK too. Like, they tried to bring in, like, I remember when I was at university and they were like, oh, we'll pay your tuition fees, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do the other. Because they wanted me for the Royal Officer Corps and Royal Officer Training Corps. And I was just like, I'm asthmatic, fat, and I'd sooner put a bullet in the Queen than take one for her. You don't want me. you know, but that, again, the reason I'm making those 2 points, comparison, like class transcends nationality, transcends certain patriotic ideas, because that's what it does. And I'm hoping Ring comes back to speak to the other side of this, because I know Ring has experience of this. but until they do, that's like you, the idea of a soldier who's superstitious, who's working class stock, that's, you know, you could give him a Yorkshire accent and it would still work, is what I'm getting at here. Like, it's all culture, and this is where the difference between class and race really comes to the fore, because these things are class markers, and class doesn't know color.
Yeah.
And before anyone comes at me, I'm not saying class is colorblind, because it's not, because there is a correlation, especially in America.
Yeah,
what I'm getting
especially in the American South.
Yeah, especially in the American South. But what I'm getting at is, you could take that character, that Adam Driver character.
Yeah, Adam Driver.
And you could make him a Yorkshireman, you could make him a Frenchman, you could make him Italian, you could make him German, you could make him from Southeast Asia, you could make him from anywhere in the world. And with only minor tweaks to what he looks like or the markers of his nationality, he's fundamentally the same character who's just lost his hand in a different war.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was talking about how boys going into the army because there's no other option.
Yeah. And Adam Driver plays a veteran very well. Because, like, when the asshole energy drink guy.
Yeah, the loudmouth Londoner.
Yeah, the loudmouth Londoner, comes in and starts harassing.
I love how you repeated that, trying to mimic my accent.
I didn't realize I was doing it.
Brilliant.
But,
don't ever do that again. But yeah.
But, comes in and starts, shooting his mouth off about how he's only got one arm, and when Jimmy, goes through his, hey, you need to show some respect, he goes through the Southern support the troops patriotic spiel. You can see the look on, Adam Driver shows how uncomfortable he feels about this, about this whole thing.
About the fact that his brother's bringing up. What's the line he gives? He stepped up while others were stepping back.
Yeah, and you can see how uncomfortable Clyde is.
Yeah.
With being praised like that through his body language. And most veterans I know, unless they're, gung-ho vet bros, are Marines. Like that.
Unless the Marines, basically. Yeah. I've met my fair share of those too, folks.
Yeah.
They're exactly as bad as they look in the movies. You got the 2 tours in Iraq, which immediately dates this. Like, 2 tours means he's served at least one contract before presumably getting his medical discharge.
Yeah, and he was on his way, home, back from deployment when the bomb got his arm.
Yeah. So again, it's unlucky. But it's also, it plays into this it plays into that American mentality of, the idea of, this veteran, it's important that it happened at the end of his service, because then he's an honourable soldier who did his duty but was then injured, as opposed to going out on his first day and hitting an IED.
Yeah.
And then what did you do? But he's got the quote-unquote honourable service history behind him.
Yeah.
And that comes across in the character. Like, as a civilian watching this, I look at the character and I see how he never really shows extreme emotion. He never really, like, his response to violent events is very badum, badum, badum. He does it by the numbers.
Yeah.
Like, you know, his brother starts a fight, and what does he do? He does it. He flicks the thing off, goes out and asks the guy for a light, as if this happens every day, and frigging Molotovs the other guy's car.
Yeah.
And he does it without breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is used to violent environments, and that's what that shows you. And it's a commentary on his
And
service
that's
history.
like one of the I'm probably gonna say this a lot, but that's one of the best scenes in the movie is, you know, Jimmy starts the fight with the loudmouth Londoner, and
this is the thing,
is getting, you know, getting his ass kicked, but because he took, you know, he started a fight with 3 guys, you know, and Clyde just like grabs a napkin, grabs a bottle of, you know, booze from above the bar, you know, walks out, you know, and asks the guy, you know, sitting on the porch smoking outside, "Hey, you got a light?"
Yeah, and it's like, walks like a badass, talks like a badass.
Yeah.
And that's what that's meant to set Clyde up as. Like, we know immediately from that scene, we know military veteran, hard as nails, doesn't panic in, like, and then that comes to fall later on in the movie as well, when he literally catches what he thinks a bomb is. Now, most people would freak the fuck out in that situation. Like,
Don't move. I'm not. Don't breathe.
Again,
I'm not.
Yes, because he knows, because he's been in that situation before. And as the audience, you're looking, you think, fuck, he's going to lose the other hand, fuck. And he's just, nope. And he's stone cold calm. Is that a PTSD response? Potentially. Like, how do you fight a bomb? You don't, so you freeze or you run. He didn't have the option to run, so he froze. And you see that. And the way this movie plays with the tropes of the veteran and the toxic masculinity and the southern man and the working class man is really fun, because it doesn't shy away from the negatives of that, but it plays them for laughs and undercuts them without making the actual statement it's making any less valuable, which is a really, like, that's an interesting route to take for a fucking comedy.
And also, I mean, there is one thing that gets him nervous.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very specific word.
Cauliflower.
Yeah, cauliflower.
Yeah. Which is obviously a code word. It's obviously a brother's thing. Like, the last time you said cauliflower to me, I ended up doing 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, and again, even that history of a juvenile record and all these other things, is very poor American working class. Like, that's the stereotype from the outside. Like, they are walking stereotypes. That's all they are. They're archetypes. And you see him, and it's really important that you see him contrasted to the rich guy. And you see him and you see his brother, working class, drinking bottles of beer. You know, they're working vests, not shirts. That guy wears a hard hat, not a tie, kind of mentality going on. And then you get rich guy who, even the girl in the working class family is more of a man than the rich man.
Yeah. Like,
now we could talk about how a salesman...
he walks into a southern bar and orders a martini.
Yeah. No, that's the racing driver.
No, it was the guy who owns the, because he was talking about to his cronies about how, you know, it's really his victory because he's the one who owns the car.
Yeah. So, but then you find out that in his downtime, he drives a V6 Mustang automatic, which, look, I don't drive.
No. Oh, you're talking about you're talking about the husband.
Yes, that's who I'm talking about.
I was referring to the
Yes, I know.
the
That's
one.
why I
Yeah.
said that's not who I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
You get the guy, and again, all this working class brothers working in a bar, all that contrasted with rich guy, car salesman, trophy wife, drives a V6 Auto Mustang with Go Faster stripes in bright blue. Dude, if you're trans, just say so and move north.
Yeah. Well,
Like
it
that's the underlying
it was
commentary of this
read
movie. That's
with
not my opinion. That's the underlying commentary.
it was read with Go Faster stripes.
No, her car
The
was red with Go
V8 that
Faster
he
stripes. His was blue.
the V8 that he got to try and show her up
Oh yeah, was the blue
was
one.
blue
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's red with Go Faster stripes. Like the stripes had 50 brake horsepower. And there's the classic car person's joke in there of it's an automatic, he can't drive stick.
Yeah.
And she specifically says her car's a stick in a classic. And the thing is, right, anyone who knows anything about cars, he should not be insulting her car. Her car's a classic.
Yeah.
Her car's probably worth more than most of his lot. Like, and she can drive it, and she's more of a man than he is about it, and she can do it at speed. Like,
and it
getting
is
those
also,
old muscle cars up to 100 miles an hour is not easy.
And it is also kind of, sleazy that he's like kind of hitting on his wife's ex-sister-in-law.
It's all around skeevy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But she puts him in his place. And so we immediately, and this is what I mean by this movie, the fact that you thought I was talking about the guy in the bar. People with money are assholes. Is what this movie tells you in the first 40 minutes or so. Yeah. People with money are assholes. We don't want to be an asshole. And then that's your jumping off point. Now, there is do we want to have the toxic masculinity discussion now? Or do we want to put a pin in it?
Well, I think we should put a pin in it because we're an hour into our discussion on the opening of Daniel Craig month, and we haven't even reached Daniel Craig yet.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll put a pin in that because I do have things to say about that. And then we have Code Pink. We have a Code Pink. So they plan the heist. It's a very, all the tropes for the heist are there, like the cheap model of what they're going to do. It's made out of cereal boxes and old toilet roll.
Yeah.
Which I just think is brilliant because, again, it takes that stereotype of the heist movie where they all sit around and someone's made a PowerPoint and, everything's all high tech. And it makes it very working class. It makes it very Southern.
And, the only guy who can crack, who can blow a bank vault is Joe Bang.
Because, of course, it's like sometimes your name picks your line of work for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes your line of work is what gave you the name and you know it. So we have that, the fact that they use cockroaches to figure shit out, like that's again, like, ew. But it feeds into that working class, low budget. Like, this is all done on a low budget.
Yeah.
They don't have millions of dollars. They can't go rob a university for an electromagnet. They don't have Armani suits. They are not robbing the Bellagio here. They are.
They are robbing. Well, at first they're planning to rob the local grocery chain auto show.
which is like the quietest day on the calendar. There'll be no security. It'll be easy in and out. And again, it's this one of his rules. His rule number 8: don't get greedy. Again, feeds into that. Rich people are pricks. We don't want to be too rich. We just want to survive.
Yeah.
Like, and then circumstances change.
Yeah, or rather, rule number like 6 or 7, shit happens.
Yeah. And then rule number 9, shit happens.
Yeah, again.
Again, yeah. And then we get race day. And we get the classic montage of what NASCAR looks like.
Yeah.
Outside of the US, the only thing I know about NASCAR is there's like they drive in circles, and there's probably more alcohol drunk that like. There's a reason Bud Light sponsors NASCAR, or did for a while.
Yeah.
Like, it's very patriotic. Like, it's all there, like the flags and the, you know, the generals in the audience, and the military are there, and it's very jingoistic. It's very nationalistic.
Well, especially since the race is being held on Memorial Day.
Yeah. It's like that standing joke with the Republicans at the last election there, where they were saying, you know, what was the thing they were saying? My country, my party, my God, in that order.
Yeah.
And like they were playing on this idea of Southern people. It's like God, country, and NASCAR in that order.
Yeah.
You know.
Though,
or,
a couple
NASCAR,
years
God,
later,
country.
A couple years later, a big chunk of people got angry at NASCAR because, they banned a certain treason rag.
Yeah. And again, the lack of the treason rag here is conspicuous by its absence.
Yeah.
In this entire montage. But again, I think that's done deliberately because they know this movie is a difficult hurdle for a lot of people. And therefore, they have to make it as accessible as possible without losing the feel of it.
And ironically, now that NASCAR has banned the treason rag, I think it is going to make it a little more timeless.
Yeah. Probably, yeah, because it's probably... Although, again, the Fast and Furious joke really did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Fast and Furious is a franchise that has been going for like the last 2 decades.
Yeah. And it's one of those...
The most recent one is still in theaters.
Yeah, and it's number like 13 or something stupid.
Yeah.
But Fast and Furious is, again, it's a very working class thing. Like, I've genuinely had people say to me, but like, how can you want to go see Fast and Furious and also go to the opera? Like, I'm a walking contradiction. Like, people are allowed to like shit that's shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're allowed to just like mindless entertainment. I'll let you decide whether I'm talking about the opera or Fast and Furious with that comment. Depending on the night, it could be either or.
And I mean, I mean, you know what my opinion is in regards to art is all art is art.
Yeah, exactly. But we very much take the point of view of all art is art and all art has some value. But we know that that's not how people really think.
Yeah.
Like, if you said to, like, describe the average Fast and Furious fan.
Someone who's really into watching pretty cars go fast.
So Jeremy Clarkson with a Texan accent.
Yeah.
Like that's a Fast and Furious fan. And like, no one's denying that if Clarkson was American, he would absolutely be like some redneck type.
Yeah.
Like that's the, like, okay, he went over there and he likes to pick arguments with them, but he does that because that's just what kind of a wanker he is.
Yeah.
But he speaks to,
and like
he speaks for the working classes, he writes for the Daily Mail.
Yeah,
I think the male.
the Fast and the Furious as a franchise understands what its fandom is about, and that's why the car stunts have gotten crazier and crazier
Yeah,
with each
it's
new
like
movie.
When I go to a Fast and Furious movie, what do I expect? Dom Toretto without a shirt on, grease monkeys with oil on their shirts, cars exploding, cars racing, some guff about family and chicken wings, and hot women in leather. That's what I expect from Fast and Furious.
Like the Fast and the Furious understands that its audience, just wants to see cars, go fast and go boom. Just like how the John Wick franchise understands that its fans just want to see John Wick kill people in really cool ways.
Look, I just want to see Keanu Reeves in leather doing something I've never seen done before with a weapon that I don't expect to be used in that situation. That's what John Wick is for.
Yeah.
Top Gear is not an engineering degree. I watch it because I like, because I enjoy the quip of three middle-aged working class guys who really don't give a shit what the public thinks of them, and occasionally the cars look pretty. There's a reason Top Gear ran for 12, 15 years on UK television, and most of the cars they showed were like Lamborghinis and Ferraris and shit. People don't tune in on a Saturday to watch a show about a Ford Mondeo and a frigging... Well, they did a Reliant Robin, but even that was played for laughs.
Yeah.
And
also I think that was like a retrospective on the history of it too.
Yeah, exactly. So again, this goes back to, do you know what it is? In this movie, you've got two kinds of men. You've got the kinds of men who drive a V8 stick shift, and the kinds of men who wish they could drive a V8 stick shift. Yeah. That's what's been set up in this movie. I personally don't see the appeal of stick shift. I can get a car from A to B if it's got a stick, but I'm not.
That being said,
I prefer motorbikes. What can I say?
That being said, there is a joke in here that it's only gotten better with age.
Go on.
So, to set this up, spoilers for a 6-year-old movie.
Mm-hmm.
Is they have to break Joe Bang out of prison to be able to do the job.
I am incarcerated.
Yeah. And so to do so, they organize a prison riot. Well, less a prison riot, more a prison strike.
Yeah. Before we get that, I do just want to point out, while I've been talking about this dichotomy between rich and poor, intelligent and, urban, rural, intelligent, and working class, not academic intelligent.
Yeah.
The use of spoonerisms, the poor characters use spoonerisms a lot. The richer characters don't. It's just the market. It's one of those intelligence markers. And again, with the toxic masculinity and all of that, feeds into that working class mentality. And then we hit race day and we see the prison.
Yeah.
They have an escape room at Monroe.
Yeah. But anyways, this joke. So the prisoners present their demands to the warden.
Yes. And this joke's good because the whole movie so far has pitched itself as being very much for the working classes and for the kind of people who wouldn't be caught dead with a book, never mind owning a library card.
Yeah.
But then obviously in prison, you're very limited on what media you can consume. So a lot of people go to prison and end up leaving with like real education because they spent a lot of time. They had a lot of time to sit and read.
Yeah.
Like standing joke when I was at uni used to be, you know, if I went to prison, I'd get my assignments done faster. You know, and you'll hear students pass comments like that all the time because that's the joke. But yeah, carry on.
So, and the warden says, we can approve your request for a Dance of Dragons to be added to the Game of Thrones shelf. But unfortunately, we cannot put on, we cannot add the Winds of Winter and a Song of Spring to the library as they haven't been published yet.
Yeah.
And that, like, I watched Logan Lucky for the first time very closely after it came out. That joke was funny then. It's even funnier now.
Yeah. And that joke, I think, will remain funny so long as George R.R. Martin is alive.
Yeah.
Because after he's, like, obviously, Touchwood doesn't happen for a long time, etc. But
yeah,
once he dies, that joke will be in a bit poor taste. But while he's alive, that's funny. That shit's funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could go with that.
Yes, they, bullshit. Bullshit. He said he'd have it out, 2 years ago. That's what it says on Wikipedia. We got 2 transfers from Federal who
knew about the crazy lady with the dragons and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got that from the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the TV show.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a great joke, but again, it's one of those jokes that very much dates this movie and makes this movie of its time. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it does date this movie. And it's markers like that in a movie that tell me the movie's not necessarily meant for longevity.
Yeah.
Whether it does develop, like, it could very easily develop like a cult status. It'll be a cult classic in 30, 40 years. But when movies make jokes like that are very much for an audience, like, there are probably some young Gen Zers, some older Gen Alphas who won't even get that joke now.
Yeah.
Like, but Game of Thrones was a cultural zeitgeist for a while.
Yeah.
And so for that generation of us who grew up with that cultural zeitgeist and who lived it, that joke will always be funny. But ask someone who was born in like 2010 about that joke, they're not going to give a shit.
Yeah.
They're not going to notice because they're not going to have been old enough to have seen Game of Thrones or read Game of Thrones. And it will be one of those long distant, it will be like Gen Z looks at millennial memes now and goes, it's not funny. It's like, yeah, it is. You just didn't live it. Like, we're making jokes about floppy disks and Gen Z are looking at us like, why is that funny? We're just like, you had to have been there.
Yeah.
And that's, again, this movie is not necessarily meant for longevity. It's a one and done. And it's fun. Like, this movie is first and foremost, it's not trying to make an in-depth commentary on socioeconomic class warfare in America. Yeah. It doesn't give a shit about the racial politics of the American South. It doesn't give a crap about whether NASCAR is, like, politically correct or not. It's just a movie. It's trying to have fun, and it's trying to fit in as many gags as possible in a short time frame, and, like, not completely alienate an audience that might not necessarily want to watch something like that.
And though that being said, a lot of the jokes are subversion of the dumb Southern hick trope.
Yes, they are. Very much so. And I will point out, like, it becomes a standing joke in this movie how bad the prison food is. The minute I saw the prison food, I said to Ring, I was like, well, that's put me off going to prison for life. So that's the thing about this movie. Like, it knows where the jokes are and how to land them.
Yeah.
It's very clever comedy
We
not
don't have a
necessarily clever media.
we don't have a food problem. We don't have food complaints at Monroe.
Yeah, like it's not necessarily clever media. It's not necessarily having an academic discussion. It's not going to contribute anything to the discourse of what working class life is like in Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's in is it North Carolina, South Carolina? One
Uh,
of the Carolinas. Like south of Mason Dixon. Like it's not. That's not what it's for. It's for people who recognize that stereotype, know that history, know that background, and just want a fucking day off.
Yeah.
They just want a day off from all the politics and everything else, which is fair cop. Everyone burns out eventually. And movies like this do have a place. And there's always, when you see movies like this, there's always arguments of you should have gone and you should have mentioned this, you should have done. No. Movie doesn't owe you shit. Movie is there to be enjoyed. Movie knows what it is, knows what its audience is, and is playing to that. If you want to watch a documentary about the American Civil War, I can get you a reading list. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
It's not what this is for. And this, I think, is a really interesting bubble, because 2015, right?
Yeah. Well, it's 2017.
2017. Where are we? We're in the Trump years.
Yeah. We're into Trump's second year.
Yeah.
So I
post Obama, we're Trump years.
Oh no, we're not into the first impeachment yet, because the first impeachment was over Ukraine.
Yeah. So we are actually, this movie is actually really brave.
Yeah.
And it's brave in that way politicians decide not to do something because it's brave, which means it'll lose votes.
Yeah.
Like, coming out with a movie in 2017 that's sympathetic to Southern whites who drive trucks and go to NASCAR. They're fucking brave.
Yeah.
Like, politically, that's a brave thing to do. Like, it's not... And I mean, again, it took steps to mitigate the worst excesses of the culture it's representing. There's no treason rags. There's there's no racism, or if there is, it's played for a laugh, or it's obviously pre-planned and set up deliberately.
Yeah.
And everyone's okay with it, and that's fine. It's not.
Yeah, like I said, it's more focused on socioeconomic class rather than race or religious culture.
Do you know what this movie is? This movie is a Republican in 2017 who is saying, I vote Republican because of the economy.
Yeah.
And we look at that and we go, but that's gross. That's it. Like, this is a movie that is trying very hard to be apolitical.
Yeah.
It does have a political bent, but it's trying very hard to be apolitical for its time, while also allowing for the fact, like, taking the piss out of itself for trying to do that.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what this movie is doing? This movie is on Twitter claiming to vote independent. That's what this movie is doing.
Yeah.
Like, you're not independent. You're just a Republican who's too cowardly to admit it.
Like, but like the reason I said, some of the more timeless jokes of this movie is, are subversions of the dumb hick, the dumb Southern hick trope. Is I'm because we are going somewhat chronologically, but somewhat thematically, and I'm bringing up the namesake of the title of this stream, where they break Joe.
Yeah, go on.
So, they break Joe out of prison, And he buys a couple beers for him and Clyde, and 2 bags of gummy bears. And they get down to where the pneumatic tubes are that lead to the vault, and he sees that they have the items that he asked for, which are a couple of bleach pens and a plastic bag. And so he starts dumping the gummy bears into the plastic bag and squirting the bleach pens out all over him.
And then that plus oxygen equals bang.
Yeah, equals what I like to call the Joe bang.
Yeah. Then we get that subversion of the guy with the very thick southern accent. Like, from the outside looking in at America, that's what I imagine America thinks it means when it says white trash.
Yeah. That is very much what America means when it says white trash.
Poor, uneducated, and then you find out that he's some sort of fucking chemistry professor, and he can write equations out on a wall using a piece of chalk.
Yeah.
And it does subvert that, and it does that a lot with this. You get Clyde, who, again, veteran, works in a bar, big reader.
Yeah.
You get oh god, I can't remember the main character's name now. But you get him, Jimmy. You get Jimmy, minor, working class, man's man, loving father, goes out of his way to be there for his daughter as much as he can. Like, it takes those very toxic tropes and subverts them.
Yeah.
And is it an idealized picture? Yes. Is it? But do I believe there are probably working class men who teach their daughters about the difference between a screwdriver and a spanner, and also make sure they're there on time to see her perform in a beauty pageant? Absolutely.
Or and also you have Melly, who works as a beautician in a hair salon
and drives a V8 Mustang.
Yeah.
Stick shift. And it's this. And this movie, that's what this movie does really well. It allows its working class characters to have more than one dimension to them.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, people look at me funny when they find out I like Fast and Furious and the opera. This movie allows for people like me. It doesn't extend that same grace and courtesy to its rich characters, to the wife, to her new husband, to the car driver, because it's twisting the old trope. The old trope used to be, look, every poor person's the same. They're barflies, or they're alcoholics, or they're this, or they're that, or the other. And they were one-trick pony as a character. And they were there to represent the working classes and to demonize the working classes a lot of the time. So this movie takes that idea and it turns it on its head. That's what I mean when I say this movie has it has its own politics, and its politics are give working class people a chance, working class people more complicated than you allow for them. And I think in 2017 that is a brave statement to make, because in 2017 it's,
there was,
if you
very
vote Republican,
much,
you're a MAGA hat wearing.
Yeah, there was and there still is very much the the cultural attitude that those Southern hicks fucked us over by simping for their orange Jesus.
Exactly. And what this movie is saying is, but look, there are good people there too.
Yeah.
There are good people who are just trying to get by. And you might see them as just another bunch of Southern hicks, but look at how they see you. They see you as self-aggrandizing, self-important, arrogant, ignorant, rude.
We
thinks your money.
We got our insurance payment, so as far as we're concerned, it's over.
Yeah. And there's no honor there. which honor in a working class environment is very important, because when you're poor and you've got nothing, all that matters is your word and your honor. And that's what you trade on. That's what you live and die by.
Yeah. Which, you know, brings us nicely into one of the better montages, the montage at the end where it goes through and everyone gets a payday.
Yeah. Like,
no matter how, like, everyone who was inconvenienced or was involved gets a payday.
Yeah. Like, even the people who just helped out of the goodness of their hearts, who didn't necessarily realize they were being involved in this.
Or, the cake lady who didn't even get a chance to eat her cake because someone crashed into her car. And then when she came back, when the weekend was over, it was all covered in pink cockroaches.
Yeah. Because they crashed into her car to cause that distraction, so they paid her.
Yeah.
Like, that's what that's insinuating there. You get the lady who asked him if he needed a tetanus jab, and there's a beautiful line that she gives when they're talking in that van, in that truck. She called him in, and it's like one of those mobile hospital things.
Yeah.
And he sat there, and he says, you go around doing, and she the line she delivers to him, she says, folks around here don't like to hear about charity.
Yeah.
We just help out people who haven't been able to make it to the doctors. That chokes me up.
Yeah.
As a working class person, that chokes me up. Because that's what people who've never been poor and never been working poor don't understand. There's a level of pride you have. And I'm sure Rin can speak to this as well. And I'm sure there's people in the chat who can speak to this. When you're poor, you don't want charity. You don't want people's pity. You're doing your best and you're surviving, and it's enough. And you take pride in the fact that you don't take handouts, that you are working off your own back, and you are doing your best, and you will earn it and you will make it. And it's really important when you get people in that mindset and that mentality, that you don't let them think you're giving them charity, because they will refuse it. Like, I've got friends who, my old workplace, and other friends I've got who are really struggling. And I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to shame anyone, who are really struggling. And sometimes I'll be like, do you want to go for a drink? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And every time, without fail, but I haven't got the money.
Yeah.
Look, I didn't ask you if you had the money. I asked you if you wanted to go. Because that's my way of helping you out and giving you an afternoon off or whatever. But if I couch it in those terms, if I couch it in, I want to help you feel better, I want to help you.
Something right? This paycheck, it's not about the pay. I didn't ask about the paycheck.
Yeah. Like, Sorry, I just realized what Ring's referencing there. Yeah, like, I didn't ask you if you were waiting for your paycheck. I asked you if you'd done the thing yet.
Yeah.
It's I've been there. I know how to,
Yeah.
Do you want to go for a drink with me? I didn't ask if you had money. I asked if you wanted a drink.
Yeah.
Like, and we do this, and it's, you do that because you try and help people out, and because you care about people, but you don't want to shame them. And having been in that situation where I would have been ashamed to take help like that, those are the things that make the difference to a lot of people. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot. Do you want to go for a coffee? It's a few quid. To me, it's not a lot because I can afford it. To them, it's a couple of hours out the house. It's talking to another human being. It's being treated with dignity and being able to sit down in a coffee shop that they normally couldn't afford, or to have something they wouldn't normally allow themselves. And, it's this sense of dignity. It's why, like, a lot of people talk about, oh, don't give money to beggars on the street. Give them money. Give them, like, when I used to smoke, I used to hand out cigarettes. Because I know if you're homeless and you're collecting money, you're not using that money to buy cigarettes. You're using that money to buy food or to pay for a hotel room or something for the night, or to go to a hostel for the night. You're not thinking about cigarettes, but cigarettes might be what stop you jonesing and, calm your nerves. It's a luxury. And if I give you something that's a luxury, you can't refuse it. So I get around it that way.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. Like, I've never known a homeless person turn down a cigarette yet. So offer it to them. If you smoke and you're walking past them, they'll take it. And what harm's it doing? Trust me, it's not the first cigarette they've ever had. What harm's it doing?
Yeah.
And we see this like the food in the prison. Again, this is the thing. Like, I've known people who've been in prison, and the one thing they always ask you to bring them is food.
Yeah.
Because the food in prison is fucking awful. Like, you thought school dinners were bad? People care about what kids are eating. Prisoners, not so much.
Go to the machine, press A2.
Like, he's looked at that machine for so long and stared at it for so long because he wants that thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have to look at it to know what button to press to get the thing he wants.
Yeah, he wants those hard-boiled eggs with his fake salt.
Yeah, J7. Go press J7.
Yeah.
He knows. And these are all class markers. But yeah, I absolutely people are proud. People really are proud, and a lot of people won't take money, but there are other ways to help them. So, just bear that in mind with people. And that's what this movie's saying. Is saying, look, these people. Do you know what it's saying? Southerners have a pride that's not treason, rag, and General Lee.
Yeah.
They're talking about a pride in working a hard day's work, working for a living, doing your best to get by, being there for your family. So it's that mentality that they're talking about. And this is why the treason rag is conspicuous by its absence. Because normally when you hear about the pride of Americans in the American South, the treason rag's the next breath.
Yeah.
And what this movie is saying is, look past the flag. Look at the people who stand for the American flag, not the treason flag.
All right. Look at the people who have been fucked by the system.
Yeah. And it does feed into that, poor whites have some sort of get out of jail free, get out of treason free card. They don't. But what this is saying is you can't judge them all on that basis. Like, there's a reason this movie never, ever makes a political statement. It's deliberate. Like, and the thing is, like, as a white person in America, if you are apolitical or you don't talk about politics, I need you to understand that you are making a political statement when you say that. You are saying, I don't care, and the truth is inconvenient to me.
Yeah.
But what this movie is saying, no, look at these white people. These people are too busy to notice politics.
Yeah.
Like, they're not paying attention. Like, there's a reason all the movement happens around NASCAR while the national anthem, like, they only stop for the national anthem and then they're off again. They don't.
Well, it's not the national anthem. It's America the Beautiful, but yeah,
it's America the Beautiful. There's a reason all the activity goes on as these things are going on. They're not paying attention to all the politics and the propaganda. They're just trying to make a living, literally in this case. And again, it's that thing of these people who are working while other people are out having a day off, paying hundreds of dollars for a ticket to go see cars race around a track. It all feeds into these people are so low on the totem pole that, like, it's really funny. He works at the track.
Yeah.
And yet there's never once any mention of any of them going to that track for leisure.
Yeah.
Because and you get the impression, although it's never said explicitly, that shit's too expensive for them.
you know, they put in condos so people could watch the track 24/7, and it was sold out in a day.
Yeah. Like, but they are the people who go there to clean those condos, not the people living in them.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the difference, and that's the class divide that's going on here.
Also,
and what it is basically saying is, don't judge them all by, you know, the trees and flag waving NASCAR wacko, you know, with a truck and 2 shotguns on the passenger seat.
Like, or you know, I'd probably say, you know, I'd probably go so far as to say that the daughter wouldn't have won the pageant if she had stuck with Umbrella.
Exactly. And again, it's that pride in. I don't like saying the phrase "pride in your heritage" when I'm talking about the American South, because that phrase is tainted.
Well, that, you know, this is country roads pride, not Dixie pride.
Well, this is the thing. Pride in your heritage in West Virginia means country roads. It means John Denver. It means working class pride.
Yeah.
You know,
miner's lady, stranger to blue water, because
she's never been to the ocean. She's never seen the sea. She's
all the water's dirty because of the mines
and the pollution and everything else.
Yeah.
And she's never been out of her hometown to know it. Like that's the point of that song. The idea that, you know, the mountains and the rivers and everything else, the beauty of nature. It's very Jeffersonian ideals, but it's Jeffersonian ideals without the ick that you get when you go further south.
Yeah, like, we should probably just do a media musings on John Denver sometime, because John Denver is very much the
If we do John Denver, we've then got to do Kenny Rogers, and we've got to do Lynn Anderson, and we've got to do Loretta Lynn, and we've got to do
because
Willie
John
Nelson
Denver
and Johnny Cash.
John Denver is very much like just the quiet majesty of the American, of the American setting in its nature.
Yeah, it's very much what John Denver manages in his music is, look at the beauty of America, look at the beauty of this country. And that is a very Jeffersonian ideal, but it's very naturalistic, and it does what this movie does. It stays the fuck out of politics.
Yeah.
But that in itself is a political statement. That's saying I can afford to not care about politics. I can afford to not care about Black Lives Matter and Donald Trump in the White House and all of that, because that doesn't affect me and my life. Now, there's two kinds of people that politics doesn't affect. The very rich and the very poor. The very rich have got the money to ignore it because it makes no difference to them. The very poor, why do I care about climate change when I don't know where I haven't got enough spare change to buy my lunch?
Yeah.
Like and I have a lot of sympathy for that mentality of, I don't have time for politics, I'm trying to survive.
Yeah.
I've never really held that mentality, because my opinion is, look, the reason you are trying to survive and you are not thriving is because of politics. And the only way out of that hustle to survive is by getting into politics.
Yeah.
And understanding the politics. But I have sympathy for those who don't necessarily think that way, because they don't have the education or the experience or the understanding to follow that logical path to its conclusion.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the party that is so prevalent in the South has basically constructed all of their policies to make sure that the people who, who live, there, to make sure that their voting base is never in a position to where they might think to vote anything else.
Yeah. Their voting base has never got time to sit down and read political manifestos. Their voting base has got time to sit down and watch 10 minutes of Fox News headlines every day. That's what they've got. Because every other minute is spent sleeping or working or doing something.
Yeah, their voting base never got a chance to get a college education because they weren't educated on, proper birth control and got pregnant in high school. Now they had to take any job that they could get and are working, are living paycheck to paycheck as a result.
Exactly. And then then they look at, these northern Democrats and they say, what do I have in common with you? You're educated, you think you're better than me because you've got an education. And a lot of that is bitterness. A lot of it is bitterness, and it's wishing that they'd had the opportunity. That's why a lot of people in poverty turn to religion, because it's the only sense of control they've got. And I have some sympathy for people who go that way. I don't think it's right, but I can explain it and I can understand how it's very easy to go that way. I don't think that should be taken to the extremes that it has been taken to, especially in American and British politics in the last 10 years. But I can see, if you go back 10 years, 10, 15 years, I had no real argument with Republicans. Like, okay, they were anti-LGBT and they were anti-abortion, but that was like a fringe attitude that some of them held, and most of them were just political conservatives who, had a hard-on for God. Like, we've gone very quickly from an era in which the Westboro Baptist Church were weirdos to which the Westboro Baptist Church were in the White House.
Yeah.
And that's an important distinction to make.
Like you like
even right wingers in America looked at the Westboro Baptist Church and went, "Those freaks are not with us." Broadly.
Yeah.
And there was this level of embarrassment that the grassroots of the Republican Party were right-wing evangelical Christians with just way, way too much interest in spouting biblical nonsense and other people's reproductive plans.
So for an example, to my shame, the first presidential election I was eligible to vote in, I voted for Romney.
Yeah, and you didn't want to admit it to me. I remember when I asked you about that, and you said, "Oh, I'm independent," and I was just like, I'm there making jokes on Tumblr about binders full of women and mittens, kittens, and you're there voting for the fucker.
Yeah.
Different lives, different times. But I never looked at Mitt Romney and thought and had an existential terror of the man.
Yeah.
Like, I knew he was a bit of a nut, and he liked his itchy underwear, and he had right-wing political ideas, but I never looked at him and genuinely feared that he would usher in the beginnings of a genocide against gay people.
Yeah.
Like, he was too old and too soft for that. I never, even George W. Bush, the worst we can say about George W. Bush is that he made a few weird comments and that he went into an illegal war.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation with people recently. What would you give to go back to 2000 and whenever that election was, 2000 and 3, whatever, in
Uh,
2004.
which election?
Not the Al Gore one, the one after it.
So Bush's second term. So that that would have been
Bush's second term.
2004, like 2004.
So what would you give to go back and pluck that George W. Bush out now from then, with all the political ideas he held and everything else, and all of the limitations on what he was doing, and all of the, okay, we're right wing, but we're not that right wing, and drop him in the White House 3 years ago? That's basically what America did when it elected Joe Biden. Let's be clear here.
Yeah.
Like the right wing has moved so right wing that center ground is right wing to where it was only 10 years ago.
Yeah, like I'm so I'm like the expectation of the MAGA crowd that we like somehow think that Joe Biden is some kind of a savior is hilarious to me.
It's like if you were given the option now, W. Bush, Mitt Romney, or another term under Trump.
I'd probably go Bush.
Same. And I protested against that fucker.
Yeah.
Like, but same. Because Romney's the wild card because we don't know what he would have done. And I wouldn't want to imagine what he'd do now when emboldened.
Yeah.
And we've seen what Trump did.
Yeah.
Bush is that, and who'd have thought we'd get to a point politically where George W. Bush, fucking war criminal, George War Criminal Bush, where we would say, actually, if you gave me him now, I probably wouldn't, like if he was the lesser of two evils, he's much less evil.
So
that guy.
So if we brought that question to the UK, if we dropped Tony Blair in the running for Prime Minister
against Sunak and Boris Johnson,
yeah,
I'd hate to do it, and it would like I would feel dirty for the rest of my life. And I'd probably go to the first Catholic confession I've been to since I was 12 years old to try and cleanse myself of it. But Blair, like, and that says a lot about where we've gone as a culture, because Britain and America do go hand in hand. But anyway, back to this movie, because we get the sick prisoner routine in the prison. Yeah. Along with the riot.
Yeah.
And again, it leans into the racist South stereotype with trying to start a riot by throwing milk at a black guy and asking him if he wanted to know how it felt to be white. Like, that's the kind of comment the screws are expecting.
Yeah.
Do you use the idiom screws in the US?
No.
The screws are the prison guards.
Ah.
That's the comment the screws are expecting. Like, that's what we're expecting as the audience. Like, this is the American South. Like, that's what we're expecting.
Yeah.
There's a reason the black guys sit at one table and the white guys sit at the other table. Like,
yeah, and and like I heard you gasp when Joe Bang went and sat.
Yes, like he went and sat at the black table. Like, dude, that's how you start a prison riot.
Yeah.
But then this movie lampshades that and turns it and says, actually, we're friends and we're asking you a favor. Will you go along with this because we have a plan?
Yeah.
And everyone goes along with it, and they don't hurt anyone. And even like starting the fire, they do it in a bin and hold it up to the smoke alarm. And even the screws that they catch, they just wrap them up in cling film on a chair. Like, they don't do any real damage to them.
it's like one of the better visual gags.
Yeah,
Just the
like
prison guards in cling film, cling film to the chairs.
yeah, like it's very, it's almost, um, it's almost cartoonish.
Yeah.
Like when they play into the stereotypes, they almost turn them into a cartoon version of them.
Well, like another visual gag that's so good it's almost cartoonish is, you know, after, Clyde drives into the gas station, to be the man on the inside, and he has this day in court and he's sentenced to 90 days. And we have this bit where the police officer in the courthouse is standing there with the handcuffs, and he looks at Clyde and he looks at his one good arm and he looks at his one bad arm, and he's like, how am I supposed to handcuff this guy?
And not a word is spoken, but the gag is there.
Yeah.
And even like energy drinks in a Magnum bottle. Like,
Yeah.
Is this NASCAR or is it Saudi Arabia? Yeah. That's a Formula One joke. So Formula One goes around the world, and Saudi Arabia hosts a race, at least one race every year, has done for a few years. But obviously, you can't drink alcohol in Saudi Arabia. It's a Muslim country.
Yeah.
Formula One, traditionally, at the end, you have the podium, and the trophies are handed out, and the drivers get a Magnum bottle of champagne.
Yeah.
And traditionally, they shake it up, pour it all over each other, and drink.
Yeah.
Like, and most of these drivers are European, so they're big drinkers.
Yeah.
And in Saudi Arabia, they replace it with non-alcoholic champagne, or like some sweet drink or so. I don't know what they replace it with.
But like probably sparkling flavored water or something like that.
Yeah, with something else. Like even to the joke, like there's a guy in Formula One who's been there for ages. Nika Hakkinen, is it Hakkinen? I want to say it's Hakkinen. There was one year at the Saudi race where he was in third until the second to last lap. Something happened, someone overtook him, he came fourth, and immediately the standing joke from the fans was he came fourth so he could go to his private dressing room and have some real alcohol faster. Like... Yeah. And anyone who's seen the Yes Minister episode where they are at the Saudi embassy and with the telephone room, same joke.
Well, on
the
also
communications room.
Oh, and also actually the NASCAR, like the fact that they're robbing, the NASCAR is, such a big thing in NASCAR has a history, a deep history with working class Americans in the South.
Yeah, like NASCAR is the sport of working class Americans in the South. It's what they watch, it's what they enjoy. Like, the only reason NASCAR is not bigger is because college football exists.
Well, no, like literally NASCAR was started by working class people in the South. You know how
moonshine runners.
Yep. Moonshine runners in the South is what NASCAR ties its roots back to.
Yeah. For those who aren't aware, basically, America, for some stupid reason, got it into their head in the early 1920s. There is a reason, but I'm just going to say some stupid reason because none of them made any sense. To ban all alcohol. Working class people need a drink. Like, their lives are hard enough. They shouldn't have to do it sober. So the gang bosses and the mafia bosses start making moonshine and shit. People in the South start making moonshine and running it up north and everything else and selling it and making a killing. It's what Al Capone made his money off. Yeah. Selling alcohol during Prohibition.
It's what the Kennedys made their money from.
Yeah. Although they won't admit it because they're Catholic. But
Yeah.
and you know, Southerners running it up north, where the Irish gangs would pick it up and distribute it across the cities. Chicago, Boston, New York, all of it. Like, there's a reason those cities are famous for having mafia bosses. It's because the mafia bosses were receiving the moonshine from down south and selling it in those cities.
Yeah.
It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's one of the reasons. And what would happen is they'd have they'd run them, and then they'd realize they were all running the same road. So they'd get into races, because obviously whoever gets there first gets the sale. And also, like, you've got to be fast because the police are chasing you. So your little car that looks like it tops out at 60 miles an hour better have something special under it, because it's got to hit at 100, or you're going to prison. You broke a constitutional law. And yeah, that's just how it all, you know. And obviously, the minute you give people fast cars to try and get away from the police, the minute they no longer have to get away from the police, they look at the car all lonely and rusted and sad in the shed and go, oh, and they decide they want to race it, because, and obviously men, like, it becomes a pissing contest, and that pissing contest gets sponsorship, and bada bing, bada boom, you have NASCAR.
Yeah.
Please don't anyone ever use that as the basis of your understanding of what NASCAR is or where it came from. But broadly, that's what NASCAR is and where it came from.
Yeah. It's a gross comedic oversimplification.
Yeah, very gross comedic oversimplification. But in very broad strokes, that's what it is. You know, in strokes so broad that they can only turn left, like the cars at NASCAR. Sorry, I'm giggling because you had to set me off then, didn't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, even energy drinking and Magnum bottles is just weird to me. Like,
well, I mean, that's
that's
supposed to be weird.
Yeah, that's a sponsorship thing.
Yeah. Like,
and then like you've got the guy who thinks he knows something about computers, who calls food software and monitors his glucose levels. And like, the minute he took that drink, I was like, he's going to crash mid-race.
Yeah.
Because he's going to go up on the caffeine and sugar, and he's going to drop back down mid-race.
Yeah.
And that was a really good setup. That was a really clever setup, the way that was done. Because again, it's rich asshole only cares about money and sponsorship and has been done for tax evasion, versus working class guy who just wants to drive and knows his own body and knows what he wants to do. And should just be left to it.
No, the driver was done for tax evasion, because the owner was saying this sponsorship is paying your back taxes.
But I don't understand America. Like, why is your employer not responsible for paying your taxes? The fuck? Yeah. I've never filled in a tax return in my life. Like, it wasn't until very recently where I had to learn what a tax return was for my job, because other people had to show us their tax returns. Like, I don't understand. What tax? You know, if you fill in a tax return in the UK, you're self-employed. You're not. You know, it's not something everyone does.
Yeah.
My taxes get taken out of my paycheck, and if at the end of the year I've paid too much, I get it back. And if I haven't paid enough, I get a bill in the post. That doesn't happen. Very rare that happens. It's happened to me once, and that was because my jobs crossed over from when I switched jobs once. Like, yeah. I called them up. I made one phone call. I said, I can't afford to pay this all in one go. Let's make a payment plan. They took it straight out of my wages. I didn't even have to think about it. And when it was done, it was done.
Yeah.
And they gave me like 12 months to pay it as well. Like, it was something to note. But yeah, like, I don't understand the American tax system. I'm not looking forward to having to figure that shit out. Yeah. But then we get the ending, which we sort of been talking around but not really discussed in massive depth.
Yeah.
Where first we get, I do want to point out little old lady driving a purple 77 Eldorado to church, and they use her to distract the one person who will be on the sort of traffic.
Yeah.
Traffic warden for that area. On a Sunday, and that's a stereotype that crosses into the UK as well. Like the idea that the traffic cops on a bank holiday weekend, like on Memorial Day, are not going to be working, and it either goes one of two ways. They're either not working because they're short staffed, or they're all working for the overtime and they've got targets.
Yeah.
Depends where in the country you are. But yeah, I did want to point that out because that poor little old lady. And then this final montage, which, like Robin Hood called, he wants his honor code back.
Yeah.
It's very honor amongst thieves. Everyone gets their share. The idea that they send a limousine to pick the guy up from prison and there's money on the chair and all that was nice.
Joe was pissed off and he thought that, Jimmy ran off with, or Jimmy, gave away all the money or ran off with, or ran off with it. And then, he gets a knock on the door and there's a shovel on the porch.
Yeah. And he finds it where he left his old stash. And this montage is really clever because what it does, like, they all level up.
Yeah.
Like, Jimmy goes from wearing a red shirt to a white shirt. He looks more put together. Like, Clyde's hand is, like, not just some cheap plastic thing. It's got, like, fingers and shit.
Yeah, it's bionic.
Yeah. Although he did receive it in a box that claimed to be from the Veterans Affairs, which clearly not the case. You see the truck, like that beat up old truck, has been upgraded to something a little bit cleaner, a little bit that runs a little bit better. Nothing flash, but just what they've all done. They've followed Rule 8. They've not got greedy. They've followed Rule 8.
They
have fundamentally remained the same people.
Both Rule 8 and Rule 10. Know when to walk away.
Yeah. Kenny Rogers called. What? Kenny Rogers called. Know when to hang up and walk away.
Yeah.
And this is what they do. And this is what makes these characters likable. And this is what heist movies have to do. Because you always get the denouement of how they did it and how it worked in the end. Because there's always got to be some element of mystery.
Yeah.
And that borrows from the detective fiction plot of the denouement, the big reveal.
Yeah. They're only going to know what we need them to know.
Yeah. And this is what heist things do. Like they're designed in that way where something's said that becomes foreshadowing and you backfill the information later.
Yeah.
But this is, they don't go over the top. Like, they've got more than enough money to buy themselves a Ferrari a piece and a big posh house and all the rest of it. Like, they took in a lot of money that day. Like, we're talking, at least by my count, 24 black bin liners.
Yeah.
Of hard cash. And most of the notes in that cash were $20, $50, and $100 bills.
Yeah.
Like, they are not broke. Like, and it becomes, it's a victimless crime because the insurance paid out.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's your moral element of, well, we didn't actually harm anyone in the end. The only person we harmed is the insurance company. And anyone who argues that insurance companies are moral and ethical beings It's just not. Just don't. Insurance
But
companies are not there to look after you. They're there to screw you.
but now you're robbing NASCAR, and robbing NASCAR is harming America.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and but they don't fundamentally change as people. They don't fall into the trap that all the rich people around them have.
Yeah.
His ex-wife, her husband, the owner of the NASCAR team, they are assholes. And they are assholes because they've come into money. Like,
Yeah.
do you think the mother would have given a shit about her daughter's calories if her daughter was still living in some backwater town with a minor for a father?
Yeah.
No. Do you think that the guy who has an $85,000 car would have thought he could walk into a hick town in America in a bar and behave like that if he didn't think he had money behind him? Of course not. Like, there's only two kinds of people who go to towns in the American South and behave like that.
What are you?
BBC Top Gear presenters and wankers like that.
Yeah. What are you doing? Document it. Document it.
Yeah, like Instagram generation. Like, everything wrong with the worst of the Instagram generation in that character.
Yeah.
And it's that. But these people don't change. They don't move out. They don't. There's this concept in working class politics and working class identity of remembering where you came from.
Yeah.
No matter how good you get, how rich you get, how far you go, never forget where you came from. Never forget.
He fucked over his driver, so when he tells the feds that he did in fact see Clyde and Joe bang, they don't
Driver
believe
didn't
him.
see shit.
Yeah, driver wasn't there and didn't see shit.
Because he's got no loyalty to him.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't earned that loyalty. But these people have got loyalty to each other. They stay in their hometown. They stay together. And it's honor amongst thieves. It really is. It's honor amongst thieves. And it takes all these toxic masculinity tropes that this movie has sort of fed you for the last hour or so and sort of says, but there is a good side to this. These people are the salt of the earth. These people don't want big houses and big cars and posh this, that, and the other. They just want to survive. They just want to get by.
Yeah.
They want to pay their bills and live their lives and have enough money at the end of the week to go to the bar, knock back a few beers, and watch the game.
Or it's best encapsulated in the final shot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is of Clyde's, old prosthetic arm at an empty table holding a beer bottle.
Yeah. I don't know if they do this in America, but it's a thing that happens in the UK sometimes. Especially if it was a local boy. Usually it's a local boy and it's his local or his parents' local. When someone dies, especially if they die in a war zone or they get injured in a war zone, what'll happen is people will meet up at the bar, and the bar is the community center of the community.
Yeah.
And people, if he's there, people will buy him a drink. If he's not there, people will buy his parents a drink or his wife a drink or whatever. Like at funerals, like you always buy the next of kin of the person who died a drink.
Yeah.
Like I go out of my way to do it at every funeral. Doesn't matter what funeral I'm at. If I know you and I have come to this funeral because I know this person, I'm going to find the people who are burying them, their family, their closest family, and I'm going to buy them a drink. Because that's me saying, I respect who you were to this person. I respect your relationship. And I'm doing this as a mark of respect to them, but also to you and the relationship you had with them, and probably the relationship you had to me. Because if I know someone well enough to go to their funeral, I probably know their family.
Yeah.
I had a friend who died a few months ago, and first thing I did, I walked into the reception place after the funeral. I walked up to the bar. I hadn't even seen the guy arrive. I knew he was in there. I'd not even seen him. I walked up to the bar, said a drink for me and a drink for father of the guy we're burying. And I looked around and said, do you know what he's drinking? They said, no. I said, get me a Bud Light. That's what he always drinks. I've known this guy since I was 5 years old. I know what he drinks. Walked up to him, put the beer bottle on the table, and he just looked up at me. And it was expected that I would do that. He expected me to do that because he knows that's the kind of person I am.
Yeah.
But that's because of the principles we have in that working class community. We all look after each other.
Yeah. The closest thing I can think of to that. Well, here I thought what I connected the arm holding the beer bottle to was how in every military dining facility there's an empty table set aside, usually by the entrance.
Yeah.
For the fallen and the missing.
Yeah. And it's like, and again, you sometimes, again, if someone has died there and you go into a pub where they were known, you'll order yourself a drink and you'll order another one. And when the bartender says, who's the other one for? You say, put it up on the shelf. And usually there's a picture of the guy there because he was a local, put it up on the shelf. And it's your way of, pouring out for the homies, basically.
Yeah.
And we do that as well. Like in my mum's culture, in sort of Jamaican Indian culture, when you serve meals, like at Christmas, like big meals like Christmas and Easter, there's always an empty place setting at the table with food on the plate for the dead and the missing. Like for those who can't be there.
There is one thing that I slightly disagree with you with in regards to the movie. And since we're describing the end, it's best to bring it up here, is the movie ends very on a vague note of maybe they didn't quite get away with it and the curse is going to strike.
It's one of those where it's left up to your imagination, but it leaves you a little bit of hope.
Yeah. Because the FBI agent that's, investigating everything during the montage is at the bar.
Yeah.
While they're celebrating.
And Clyde hits on her.
Yeah.
But the case is closed, so there's not much she can do about it.
Yeah.
Also,
the great bit about how Jimmy figured out it was safe
brilliant is that. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. And that is, again, if you come from an affluent background, if you come from the kind of background that never had to worry about where the next meal was coming from, you don't know the process for getting your phone shut off.
Yeah.
Or you don't know how that works. You don't know what it is to be in debt. But Jimmy knows, and it's just a normal part of his life.
Yeah.
And he's not sweating it. Hence why it's a normal part of his life. And he uses that. That's knowledge that you can't know if you grew up with money or if you have money. Like you could not possibly know. Like you can read the documents and the documents say you'll be shut off after 30 days, 60 days, whatever.
Yeah.
You cannot know. Like companies are fucking sneaky bastards. Like they'll write it whatever they want, but they want their money from you. So they will do it how they're going to do it regardless.
Yeah.
So unless you've been in that situation, you couldn't possibly know how that situation's going to go. But he knows because he's been there.
Yeah.
And again, it's this working class knowledge, poor knowledge, and this pride in having that knowledge.
Yeah.
Not because it means that you were ever flaky or didn't pay your debts, but because it means you've lived a little and you've seen how hard life is, and you've lived a hard life, and there's pride in it's bootstrap theory, basically, isn't it? It's look, I pulled myself up from nothing.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of most heist movies. That's why the bad guy in every heist movie is like rich prick.
Yeah.
Just rich prick. And that's
Like
how this plays out.
either rich prick or faceless corporation.
Yeah. Same thing, aren't they, according to the US Supreme Court?
Mm.
American constitutional humor.
Yeah.
Never changes.
But I thought it was a living document.
Yeah, but you need a 2/3 majority.
Yeah.
The irony of needing a 2/3 majority to overturn a 3/5 compromise. But
So
I'm getting it all out now, folks, because I have an interview this week in which I have to be on my best behavior.
Pat. Anything else we want to say about? Because I think we've pretty well covered it.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie. This movie is very much a popcorn movie. Like, as much as we talked about class and socioeconomics and everything else, like, we're stretching. We're stretching. Like, I've pulled a few muscles. I'm going to need a hot bath later. Like, this movie is very much, it's a popcorn movie, okay? You sit down, you watch it, you laugh, you go home.
Yeah. It's a heist movie.
Yeah, you take from it that the poor are clever and ingenious and care about their families, and corporate rich pricks don't give a shit about anything other than money.
Yeah.
And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Like, it's a movie. What do you want?
So my brain just did a thing.
Go on.
I'd really like to see like Robin Hood done as a heist movie.
You have seen that. It's called Disney's Robin Hood.
No, I mean like Robin Hood done as a proper Ocean's 11 style heist movie.
So Robin, Little John, Much the Miller's Son, Alan Adale.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That could be fun. That could be fun. Someone get me a Hollywood director on the phone. I got an idea.
Yeah. Because, I like, as we were discussing, like, the socioeconomics and everything, it kind of clicked to me is the heist movie hits the cultural itch that the Robin Hood stories do.
Yeah. And it is. It's because it's the same thing. It's the same audience. It's the same goals. It's the same aims, and it's broadly the same plot.
Yeah.
It's sticking one up to the man, sticking one up to the incompetent, corrupt officials who are usually rich off the back of that corruption, and it's the power of friendship and love and honor amongst thieves and looking out for each, like, even this whole thing of they've made sure everyone who was involved got paid, everyone who was like hurt by what they did got paid in the end. That's a very Robin Hood idea. The idea of steal from the rich to give to the poor.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And they stole from the insurance company in the end, which, if you're going to steal from the rich to give to the poor, if anyone can come up with like an honest to God, purely positive that insurance companies bring to the world, please DM me. I would love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, best I can do is say that they're a necessary evil in our capitalist society.
They're not a necessary evil, though. That's just it. They just not. Like, aside from like driver's insurance, which, I mean, especially in America, because you don't want to get stuck with medical bills.
Yeah.
And like covering high value items like that, like driver's insurance, like not even phone insurance is that good, because like, home insurance in case of a fire, yeah, But again, they'll go out of their way and do anything they can to not pay out. So
Yeah.
like,
well,
you know, what's the deal?
And I will say in the beginning, like when it was, you know, when it wasn't a for-profit business and instead was a collective community effort to make sure everyone was covered.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you pay into the pot, and if something happens, you can take your, you know, you get to take your share out of it to cover your damages.
Yeah, but that's a cooperative, not an insurance scheme. Like, that's to pay a cooperative. That's not insurance.
Well, that's what insurance companies evolved out of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
you see what I'm getting
but
at.
also I don't like. Yeah. Like comparing a cooperative and insurance, like and a modern day insurance company, it rankles a little bit.
Yeah.
And we still have insurance companies in the UK, like famously the Co-op do insurance, the original Co-op. You know, Black Widow insurance started out as a Co-op, and all these other things, life insurance, and certain funeral insurances and things. But like, what it's ballooned into, like, it's the dangers of capitalism right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, great movie. Very working class. Very like, if you liked Fast and Furious, you will like this movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's the audience it's playing to, and it's not pretending otherwise. It's what I like about this movie is it knows what it is.
Yeah.
And it leans into it rather than trying to be all things to all men.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't like cars, heist movies, working class politics, and like stunts, this movie's not for you. If you like those things, enjoy.
Though I do have to bring up, you know, since this is Daniel Craig month, I do have to bring up one of the biggest subversions pulled off by this movie.
Is that Daniel Craig is not the star?
Well, it's more the fact that Daniel Craig, you know, who at this point is most famous for being the latest, you know, who is most famous for being the latest Bond, is playing a hick chemist.
Yeah, it's like, and again, it's the exact opposite of James Bond, isn't it? Suave, upper class British spy becomes hick chemist in a onesie.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Like, Daniel Craig made no secret of, once he did James Bond, he wanted to do smaller movies and he wanted to play different characters, so he wasn't typecast.
Yeah.
And I think he's done all right. He's done all right. Like, he's the like, he's clearly like he needs to work on his southern accent. Like, I'm British and I can hear when his accent breaks in this movie.
Yeah.
So it must drive actual Americans to fucking do lolly. Can only apologize. That's how you sound when you try and talk like English people. Stop it. Yeah. But it's a fair cop. You know, he's a British actor. Like, he's southern. He's not that bad. It breaks occasionally, but whose doesn't? Like.
But, you know, speaking of which, it is time to go into our shilling, and next week we are continuing the Daniel Craig in a southern accent train with Knives Out.
And, love that movie, lots to say.
And I haven't seen Knives Out, but we'll see if his southern accent gets better with 2 years of practice.
Oh, really? Like, the southern accent is near cringeworthy in Knives Out, but the rest of it's pretty good.
And as a reminder, the week after that will be a brief hiatus because I will be out of state for a funeral. And we'll just have to see how, like, what Daniel Craig movie ends the month out for us.
Cool.
And with that, tagline.
Take care, be good. And if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you what to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.